Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We're on chapter 8 of I Hunt Killers. Before we begin, we're going to take a deep breath in. Chapter 8. On bad days, Jazz wondered if he had figuratively taken his father's place, just as he'd literally taken Billy's place behind the wheel of the Jeep. Was that his destiny? Billy Dent made no secrets of his plans for Jazz. "You'll be the greatest ever, Jasper. They'll never catch you. You'll be the new boogeyman parents use to scare their kids into behaving. You'll make everyone forget Speck and Dahmer and even Jack the goddamn Ripper. My boy. My boy." But today wasn't a bad day. Play practice had gone well. Connie had forgiven him for getting caught breaking into the morgue. A part of him wished he could forget about tracking down whoever had killed Jane Doe. Just be a normal guy. Look to the future, not the past. Maybe focus on the play, on school, on being a better friend to Howie and a better boyfriend to Connie. Prove once and for all to her dad that he was a good fit for his daughter, and prove to the world that he wasn't going to grow up to be the new Billy. That would be nice. Yeah, right. And Howie might be starting center for the Pistons next season. As his grandmother's house came into view on the left, a familiar sight greeted him. A late model sedan parked in the driveway. He groaned out loud, then plastered a pleasant grin on his face. It was easy, reflexive. Jazz had been conning the sedan's owner for a while now. He parked next to the sedan and climbed out. It was the only person who annoyed him more than Doug Weathers. Melissa Hoover, social worker, sat on the front porch step. She worked for the county, and ever since Billy had gone to prison, she'd had one goal in life: getting Jazz out of his grandmother's house and then either to a foster home or to his Aunt Samantha. Samantha, who'd never even met Jazz, who hadn't spoken to Billy in 15 years, who swore she would flip the switch herself if the government ever came to its senses and decided to execute him. Yeah, sure, that would be great. Jazz would have none of it, meaning he spent his days striving to prop Grandma up just enough that she could maintain custody of him. For a week after Billy's arrest more than 4 years ago, Jazz had been with social services, and he spent 4 of those days in a foster home. After the initial shock of Billy being arrested and of being yanked out of his home, Jazz fell back on the skills Billy had taught him: acting, conning, pretending to be normal. He'd easily fooled the social workers and the foster family into thinking he was fine. A sneak peek at his file revealed the phrase, "impressively well adjusted." He gave them just enough that they thought he was working on his issues, and they released him into the custody of his grandmother, his closest living relative. But the truth was, he didn't know what his issues were. He knew he was afraid of his own powers and prowess, but that was his demon to wrestle with. No one on earth could understand what he'd gone through, what his upbringing had been like. So how could anyone help him? He was on his own. He might as well do that work here, in the house Billy had grown up in. Grandma's house was the only home remaining for him, quite literally. The wealthy father of one of dear old Dad's victims had bought the Dent house at auction and had it bulldozed, then burned the wreckage and debris to ash. Jazz watched on TV as his childhood home went up in smoke, to the cheers of the gathered crowd. That same wealthy father later contacted Jazz and offered to pay for him to attend the college of his choice, claiming, in a letter that went on for 10 pages, that there was no reason for Billy Dent to claim one more victim. Jazz politely declined the offer. Jazz sauntered over to Melissa, who stood and brushed off her skirt as he approached. "Did Grandma pitch a fit when she saw you coming?" he asked. "She went for the shotgun." Grandma Dent was never all that sane to begin with, her head packed full of with a rotting collection of twisted religious dogma, crackpot conspiracy theories, and just plain wrong, handed down from generation to generation. Now she'd gone from unpleasant to outright dangerous. She avoided doctors, so no one could be sure, but even without a diagnosis, Jazz was certain she was on the road to Alzheimer's Town, an option he was careful not to let slip. As bad as she appeared to the outside world, Jazz knew she was actually much, much worse. Hateful, spiteful, and crazier than a windsock in a tornado, but family. Both barrels are plugged and the firing pins are popped, Jazz assured Melissa. She's not trying to shoot you. She's just trying to scare you off. She's from that generation that doesn't trust government people, you know? I know, Jasper. When she's in this kind of mood, I just steer clear. Probably the best move. Jazz cranked up the wattage on his smile. You look lovely today. I like the skirt. Melissa snorted and glared at him. Flattery will get you nowhere. But it had already gotten him exactly where he wanted to be. He was less than an arm's length from Melissa. She was a plain woman. Not unattractive, not attractive, just plain. In her late 30s, she was unmarried and likely to remain so, a workaholic aging out of her childbearing years. Jazz knew the type. He'd studied everything he could about Melissa Hoover as soon as she'd been assigned to his case. He'd even followed her for a day or so, employing all the useful skills Billy Dent had passed down. He knew she was tough, that she took care of kids whether they wanted it or not, but he couldn't let her learn just how bad Grandma had gotten, because then she would be able to take him away. I don't know why you keep coming out here, Jess said, but I have to admit I like seeing you. Melissa wasn't falling for it, but she didn't say anything about how close he was to her. If he wanted to kill her, he was close enough now. Close enough that there was absolutely nothing she could do to stop him. As tough as she was, as capable as she was, her life was now in Jazz's hands, and she didn't even know it. But people matter, even people mucking around in my life. She's a sick old woman, and she's not getting any better, Melissa said. I think she's starting to drift into senility, too. Ha, if only you knew. You're a great kid, a great young man, with your whole life ahead of you. So I should just cut her loose? I'm not saying that, but you should think of yourself. Thinking of myself is one of the diagnostic criteria for antisocial personality disorder, Jazz told her. You should be glad I'm thinking of someone else. It means maybe I'm not a sociopath like Billy. You're staying with her because you think that maybe by caring for the woman who started all this, you can somehow redeem her and your father and maintain your own. Are you listening to me, Jasper? Of course I am, he said smoothly. Look, I'm 17. In a year, I'll be out on my own. Even a year in this toxic environment could... Toxic? The mask slipped, and he let his anger show. You think this is toxic? Where were you on my 9th birthday when Billy showed me how to use quick slime to dissolve body parts? Melissa took a step back, her eyes wide, a hand on her purse. Damn, he'd gone too far. Mace? Probably mace. With women, it was almost always mace. But Jazz wouldn't put it past Melissa to be packing heat, and not some little girly der-ringer either. He wouldn't be surprised to see her whip a big old Glock or Magnum out of that purse. Jazz reached out and grabbed her by the wrist, widening his smile, making his eyes dance with mischief. Aw, come on, Melissa. I'm just joking. If I can't joke about this stuff, what can I joke about? Black humor, good for the soul. Jazz employed his very finest lost puppy dog look, guaranteed to work every time. I'm trying to help you, she said. I know you don't want my help, but you need it, and I'm not giving up on you. I'll go for now, but only because your grandmother's having a bad day. I'm coming back, Jasper. I'm going to help you whether you like it or not. Jazz watched her back out of the driveway, forcing himself to wave jauntily as she pulled away, while inside he seethed. This was the worst, darkest part of the curse Billy Dent had passed down to him. Women. Jazz knew that women were no better or worse than man, but he knew this at a remove, like a scientist knows that a photon moves without actually watching one in motion. His upbringing, his gut, his every screaming thought told him that women were simultaneously special and useless, that they compelled him, drove him on, but were ultimately expendable, fungible, good for a couple of things, but not for long. Of Billy Dent's 123 or 124, depending on how you counted, victims, close to 100 had been women. Of the men, half were victims of opportunity. Women, and especially certain types of women, were prospects and nothing more. The gospel according to Billy Dent. Jazz hated that part of himself. He hated the part of himself that looked at a strong woman like Melissa Hoover and could think only of how to make her weak and desperate before finally making that weakness and desperation moot. He thought of Connie. Connie was different. Connie was the one woman really, he could be himself with. Being himself meant a whole host of things. Good, bad, grotesque. Connie accepted all of them. And most important of all, he allowed her to accept them. Something he'd never done with anyone in his entire life. Did that mean there was hope for him? Hope for something beyond what Billy Dent had planned for him? He sank to the front porch step, his legs trembling and no longer trustworthy to hold his weight. Sometimes hope could be the most frightening thing in the world. When he'd managed to gather his wits, Jazz pulled himself to his feet and dared to go inside. The vestibule was dark. Grandma had turned off the lights and closed all the blinds. "Grandma?" he called. "Hey, Grandma, it's Jasper. I'm alone." Nothing. He flicked on a light and made his way into what Grandma insisted on calling the parlor, even though it was nothing more than a cramped little day room with a dusty old love seat and some side tables. His grandmother was curled into a corner on the love seat, her legs tucked up against her chest, her spindly form wrapped in a threadbare housecoat. Her thinning hair spun around her head like a whirlwind of gray cotton candy gone wrong. She was aiming a shotgun at him, her eyes wide and wild. "Hi, Grandma." "I'll shoot her!" Grandma shouted. "I'll shoot her right through you if I have to." "She's not with me, Grandma. I'm alone. I promise." He took another step toward her. "Don't think I won't shoot you. I will. I should have shot your daddy. Should have shot him when he came right out of me. Or maybe when he was still in me. That would have been good, too." "Can't argue with you there, Grandma." Another step. The gun was harmless, but if she pulled the trigger, she'd learn how harmless it was, and she'd be twice as pissed. He wasn't always bad, you know. He grew up okay. It was when he met her that everything went all to hell. Billy Dent had been torturing and killing small animals since the age of 8, but Jazz let Grandma have her delusions. She liked to believe that Jazz's mother had made Billy into a sociopathic murder machine, and since Mom was long dead, there was no harm in letting her have that specific delusion. "Just like you!" she yelled, raising the shotgun to track his head as he closed in on her. "Like you! I know what you've been up to. Just like your pappy. Taking up with whores. Putting your thing inside them. That's where the corruption comes from, boy." Jazz bit the inside of his cheek to keep from laughing. Had he just been bemoaning his fears and constant struggles over women? Well, here was their genesis, handed down from crazy old Grandma Dent to sociopathic Billy Dent, and from there to Jazz himself. Rarely did real life provide such immediate context for a problem. Who needed therapy when Grandma could just explain everything? "I'm thinking of making macaroni and cheese for dinner," Jazz told her, now mere inches from the shotgun. I'll use the garlic breadcrumbs on the top, the way you like it. And if we have Romano cheese, I'll add that to the cheddar. How's that sound?" "I should blow your damn fool head off," Grandma snarled. "I don't want them damn elbow noodles either." "Right. Who would? I'll use bow ties. How's that? Bow ties are good. They remind me of how I met your granddad. He was so handsome in his dress uniform. She sighed. You think cooking me dinner means I'm not going to shoot you? Well, you can shoot me after dinner. If you shoot me before dinner, who's going to cook for you? She squinted as if she were attempting long division somewhere behind those ice blue eyes. They were Billy's eyes, almost exactly. Jazz's were hazel, his mother's eyes. He thought of them as sane eyes. Garlic bread crumbs, she spat, thrusting the shotgun for emphasis. With a smooth, unhurried motion, Jazz plucked the shotgun out of her hands. Yep, garlic. No vampire will come within 100 yards of you after you eat this stuff. Grandma sniffed and crossed her arms over her chest. No such thing as vampires, just monsters. Jazz couldn't argue with that. He gave the shotgun back to Grandma, who looked at it like it was a new toy, and then, bored, laid it next to the love seat. If the whole scene hadn't been so routine to him by now, he would have found it hilarious or horrifying. Probably hilarious. He whipped up the macaroni and cheese as promised. After dinner, he was standing at the sink, washing dishes, and idly gazing out the back window at the old abandoned bird bath, when Grandma suddenly marched up to him at the sink and smacked him on the back of the head. For back-talking me, she shrieked. Jazz gripped the edge of the sink and told himself not to spin around, not to strike back at her. She was a weak old woman. He was a strong young man. One blow from him would cripple, if not kill her. Another blow landed. Jazz kept washing the dishes. A beating from Grandma was more an inconvenience than anything else. He let her pinwheel her bony arms at him until she tired and staggered back to lean against the kitchen table, clutching her chest and breathing in ragged gasps. The chest clutching was new. Was she about to have a heart attack right here and now? Jazz didn't know how he felt about that. No one would weep when Grandma died. Dead, she would be nothing more than another body on the Dent family's roster of them. Alive, though, like Melissa said, maybe his caring for Grandma would somehow redeem her, or his father, or himself. Maybe in caring for her, he would observe something, learn something about his lineage, something that would give him some sort of insight into his father and his own upbringing. Anything. Something to help him figure out how to avoid a future that, on some days, felt inevitable. A future that ran thick with blood. Or maybe, more likely, just like your daddy, Grandma rasped, fumbling into a chair, having apparently decided not to die. You're just like your daddy. Now that hurt, more than a beating ever could. After getting Grandma washed up and tucked in for the night, Jazz finally allowed himself to collapse on his bed, but not for long. He had plans to make for his excursion back to the crime scene. He scoped the area out on Google Earth, even though he knew it well already. Then he carefully packed a small duffel bag with everything he thought he and Howie would need. Had he forgotten anything? He tilted back in his desk chair, thinking, staring at the walls. Long ago, he taped up images of his father's victims. 123 photos clipped from newspapers, printed off the web, surreptitiously photocopied from G. Williams' files. He told himself it was a reminder of what could happen if he ever lost control. In that roster of the dead was a 124th photo, this one taped between Billy's 80th and 81st official kills. That was Jazz's best guess as to when Billy had killed the woman in the photo, Jazz's own mother. The photo was all that remained of her, that and a few scanty memories of her from when he was much younger. The dog, Rusty, that she'd given him as a puppy, the smell of cupcakes in the oven, the tang of her homemade lemon frosting. That was it. He remembered so little of her. But based on Grandma's comments and Billy's actions, there was only one reasonable conclusion. His mother had been the one good thing in his life, and even though he had precious few memories of that good thing, he would kill or die to keep them. The police could find no evidence that Billy had killed Mom. No one could. She was officially a missing person, and her case was colder than popsicles on New Year's Eve. Jazz only knew that one day she'd been in his life, and the next she'd been gone. He had been 8 years old, and when he asked Billy, "Where's Mom?" Billy had simply shrugged and said, "She went away." That's all Billy would ever say, no matter how Jazz asked. He could beg and plead. She went away. Weep and brawl. She went away. Threaten and rage. She went away. All that remained were the half-remembered snippets of his childhood. Did anyone ever remember their childhood with perfect clarity? Jazz wasn't sure, but his own was staticky and foggy. Billy's lessons remained, of course. The day he met Howie, what had happened to Rusty, but so much else was just muddy. A river of images and thoughts and feelings, dirtied and polluted so that no one could drink from it without gagging. And that one memory, or dream, or both. He didn't know which it was, but it felt so real. The knife, the voice, Billy's voice, he knew, telling him to take the knife. Billy's hands guiding his own. Billy's voice again. A knife and flesh and the flesh parts, and he feels the resistance of it. And how does he know? How does he know the resistance of flesh? Another voice, drawn tight in pain, a gasp. Of all his victims, Billy refused to talk at all about Janice Dent. Par for the course. Serial killers pretended to confess, but they never really told the truth. Going back to olden days, back to the 19th century, H. Holmes confessed to killing 27 women during the Chicago World's Fair, but police were convinced he'd murdered more than 100. Jazz knew killers. Billy had studied the serial killers of the past the way painters studied the Renaissance masters. He learned from their mistakes. He obsessed over them. And he passed his knowledge down to his son. Lucky Jazz. Those were the things he remembered from his childhood. Killers always held something back. They couldn't help themselves. Jazz's mom was Billy's holdback. Other than the 124 victim pictures, there was only one other photo in the room, this one of someone still living. It was a black and white photo of a pretty, slender teenager dressed in a prim dress, wearing a pillbox hat and carrying a small clutch purse. She was standing in front of the church, smiling at the camera. His grandmother as a young woman, years before she begat a monster. Jazz followed the chronology of Billy's career, reciting the name of each victim from memory as he gazed at the pictures. Cassie Overton, he began. Farrah Gordon, Harper McLeod. He ended back at Grandma's old photo. Someday, he murmured. Someday I could snap. I'm my father's son. It could happen. And when that day comes, when I take my first victim, it could even be you. He surprised himself by crying, but he wasn't sure if it was for his grandmother or for himself. He didn't like thinking about killing her, but he couldn't help it. It felt good. She was a horrible person. She'd given the world the artist, Green Jack, whichever nickname you wanted to use for dear old dad. He wanted to figure out what made her tick, but he also wanted her gone from the face of the planet. Maybe then, maybe, he wouldn't feel so guilty. But he knew that wasn't true. He would always feel guilty. He hadn't been able to protect his own mother. He hadn't been able to help that kid, the one at the drugstore, who collapsed at his feet. He should have killed Billy in his sleep years ago. God knows he knew how to do it. Billy had instructed Jazz in the fine, gory art of murder since Jazz was old enough to walk. He could handle knives, guns, hatchets, hammers. Billy had kept an old hand drill in a kitchen cabinet, and Jazz could have drilled right into his father's brain while dear old dad slept. Could have done it and saved the world the gruesome murders that followed. People said to him, "You were 13. You knew right from wrong. You knew what he was doing was wrong. Why didn't you stop him?" But what they could never understand was that killing was only wrong for other people, not for Billy, and not for Jazz. That's how he'd been raised, brainwashed, duped, whatever word you wanted to use. That was. He rolled over in bed and stared at the wall, finding Harriet Klein's picture. Green eyes, like he remembered. Bringing back Harriet Klein was impossible, and there was nothing he could tell Jeff Fulton that would make the poor man's sad, wretched life any better. But there was a way to atone, Jazz knew, for his father's sins, and for his own. Jane Doe's killer was still out there. I'm going to catch you, Jazz whispered. I'll track you down, no matter how crazy it is, no matter how crazy it makes me. Because ultimately, he would rather be that kind of crazy than his grandmother's. And we'll go to chapter 9 in the next video.